the godmother.
Yes.
In the family tree branch, I'm not 100% sure how it works with godmothers and godfathers. Does that not make you godfather-in-law?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
All right, so you're not the godfather.
She exactly. She got to become a godmother. I'm like, man, that's fantastic. Congratulations. I feel like now that makes me the godfather-in-law.
What are the rules on that?
I don't know.
What's the rule on
I don't know, but I mean, you got to start making a lot of decisions, putting people in their place.
Yeah. Are you going to start wearing a suit around?
Tell them to come here, rubbing your face a little more.
I feel like for starters, tonight I should watch The Godfather.
And you have to.
Maybe I should start.
I feel like that's part of the rules, right? If you want to be the godfather-in-law, you have to watch.
And maybe I should start making people offers.
You should get a cat.
Refuse.
You should get a cat.
I'll get a cat and make people offers they can't refuse.
You should. I like
Start
that.
smoking a little more cigars.
You got to dive into it. You got to play the part.
Yeah.
I don't mind that.
Dabo Swinney criticizes the state of college football. I'm shocked. Herschel Walker joins the show for an interview you're not going to want to miss, and we recap UFC 273. I'm Jake Crane, and this is Crane & Company. Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney has been critical of the direction college football has been going in for quite some time now. Whether it be NIL or the transfer portal, he worries that kids are getting manipulated at a much higher rate and that it will affect graduation. He also adds that it takes away the most important part of a person's college experience, the education. While I haven't been the biggest fan of the new transfer rules allowing players to transfer one time free of charge to a school of their choice regardless of division without paying a penalty, don't agree with that. I could not disagree more with Coach Swinney about what he's talking about. Recruits have been getting manipulated as long as there's been high-level recruiting. It's always gone on, and it manifests itself in many different ways, whether it be tampering, illegal funds, lies, or broken promises. Hell, it's basically part of the recruiting game. These new rules didn't invent manipulation, provoke coaches to lie, or stretch the truth about what their program can provide a player making their decision. To act as if this will be the downfall of college football is pretty laughable. There will always be manipulation. Now, when it comes to graduation, if any coaches should have a gripe about it not being about graduating, it's college basketball coaches. They typically get their best players for a couple semesters at max, thanks to the rule on that side of the coin. There's been no year limit decrease on players being eligible to enter the NFL draft. You still have to stay at least 3 years to be able to transfer to another school. And to be eligible, you have to have the grades and be on track to graduate. You can't make NIL money if you aren't academically eligible to play in the game to help boost the brand that sponsors you. Should there be some guardrails put on the portal and NIL? Yes, I've mentioned them many times on this show. But to act as if this will be the ruin of college sports is an overreach at best. What I do believe Madden's Dabo Swinney, however, is mostly about NIL and the transfer portal because it's reset the market somewhat. For a long time, Dabo and Clemson have really been anti-transfer and anti-JUCO. These new rules now make it where you have to play the game in the transfer portal. You can't just rely on building players within the program without having to re-recruit them from transferring. Nobody said that nobody's transferred from Clemson before all this NIL and transfer portal stuff, but having to sit out a year to transfer laterally is a nice bargaining chip that coaches no longer have because it no longer exists. The doom and gloom scenario from Swinney is more of a reaction to him having to switch his flow up as opposed to it actually being about leading college football off a cliff. As I said earlier, there should be some changes as we build this thing. But the problems college football faces with these new rules is more of a strong hurricane than the apocalypse that Dabo wants you to believe. Hell, we saw it even called Jake Gyllenhaal from New York telling him to come home because it's about to get bad yet. I'll bring in David Cohn, Blaine Crane. Guys, I think it's pretty simple when you look at it. Dabo has been very critical of this for a while, but you have to adapt or you won't survive. I don't think Clemson is out of their big run they've had by any stretch of the imagination. They got to figure it out at quarterback, but you're either going to play the game or you're not. And people have been playing the game way before NIL and way before any of this stuff. It's not like this is some new problem.
I agree with almost everything Coach Sweeney is saying here, but I also agree with you that this isn't necessarily a new problem. I mean, go all the way back to the beginning of college athletics. The athletic experience was just one facet of the collegiate experience, right? I mean, you get into Yale, and then if you can row crew or play rugby or football, whatever, you do so, right? I mean, a lot of the problems we have now are because there's so much money in the game, right? And that's been a lot of great friends of mine and some family members have gotten a chance to make a living. You guys coach for a long time because there's so much money in the game. You guys got to make a living doing that for a while. So money in the game is a good thing, but it's always going to create problems. My thing is we have a professional league in all of these sports, right? And we have a professional football league. And I've always been a fan of for kids to be able to make money off their name, image, and likeness. It never seemed right for me. For someone who's taken a math class could sign an autograph for $10, but someone who's playing on the football team can't. Never seemed right to me. At the same time, I do think we need to be careful about the professionalization of the sport, and not just college football, but all of collegiate athletics. And that's something that we talk about with Herschel Walker. And so to me, like, how far down the chain does it go? I mean, are we going to start seeing like high school kids say, well, like, you shouldn't expect me just to come out for the high school team for nothing. Like, if y'all want me there, you got to pay me. You know, like, how far? We have a professional level, right? And to me, I want to see the purity of the game, not just football, college basketball, all of these sports, to remain at a high level. Again, more money that enters in, the more problems you're going to see, and also a lot of good benefits too. We tend to overlook a lot of the great aspects of the game. Like, Dabo Sweeney's not here saying like, hey, the playoff was a great addition to the sport. You know, like, we tend to overlook a lot of the good and just point out the bad. But I do hope that college football and college athletics can remain pure in the years to come.
Yeah, again, when you enter that much money into it, it's almost like trying to carve it in a way that can keep it the most pure while also being able to have players make money. Because, again, when you look at the amount of jerseys that get sold, whether you're Cam Newton or you're Tim Tebow, they should have a way to make some money. Herschel Walker has a pretty good idea, I think, that we're going to get into in the interview where they can make money. It can still be smart. I don't think you're going to see it bleed down the high school level just because the demand isn't there like it is for college. The NFL's a totally different thing. But I can see where you worry about that slippery slope. I can totally understand that. Blaine, I do think there needs to be guardrails put in. Should there be a salary cap on NIL? How does that work with the free market? Whatever. But on the transfer portal, I've talked till I'm blue in the face about this one-time free transfer rule with the ability to go lateral. Going up, is what it is. Going down, you can start from scratch, basically, and not have to sit out, but that's going down. Whenever you're moving laterally or you're moving up, outside of the head coach leaving, I know you talked about the position coach and you think you should be able to transfer your position coach leaves. They're going to put guardrails in it, but I don't think this is this big 800-foot, 10 million pound boogeyman that Dabo Sweeney makes it sound like.
Is it just me, or is Dabo Sweeney always crying about something?
He does complain
always crying about something. Realistically, why aren't you worried about your starting quarterback being able to throw some passes and not worry about this?
Well, what's he wrong about here, though?
I don't think he's wrong, but
the graduation thing, I think he's 100% wrong. I don't think it has anything to do with that.
I need solutions. So we know the problems. These problems have been these problems for a while. I need solutions. So just don't come out here and cry about it. If you're Dabo Sweeney, but the thing about it is, how are you going to change this?
But what he says is that the Power 5 conferences should separate themselves and be under one commissioner. I mean, is that not a solution?
I mean, but I don't see that ever happening.
I remember Lloyd Carr telling me that 10 years ago.
I could see.
That's how long it's been a problem. But when is it ever going to happen? Is it ever going to happen?
I can see it breaking away to super conferences.
Okay.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, I think some of the machinery in his argument doesn't make sense. The graduation thing, first off, you want to talk about manipulation? If you want to tell me Dabo Sweeney and that staff haven't lied to a recruit about something or kind of stretched the truth about something, or he hasn't been on a staff that did that, or he didn't do that himself recruiting, that's 100% lie. You know that's a lie. I know that's a lie. You know that's a lie. My thing is the graduation stuff. How does that make sense? Now, if the NFL came out and said, you know what? 2 years. All you got to do now is stay 2 years and you can come to the NFL. I can understand you somewhat making an argument there. But people can get degrees in 3 years, and you still have to stay 3 years, whether it's redshirting a year, playing 2 years, whether it's being at a school, redshirting, then transferring, then playing 2 years. It's not like somebody that is getting drafted is going to say, you know what? I'm not going to get drafted so I can finish and stay here and get this degree. That never happens. The funny part to me is with NIL, it actually raises the chances of that happening. Guys might stay for that 4th year. Look at Colin Castleton's coming back to play college basketball, for an example, at Florida for the men's basketball team because of NIL. I think NIL could actually get guys to stay longer, which means more guys are going to graduate. I don't understand the graduation argument. It makes no sense to me.
And you could be right. And after we have a larger sample size on NIL, we can start to see like what effect it has had. I wrote an article a few years ago with a potential solution. I want you guys to tell me, especially as former coaches, what you think. With the NFL, obviously, there's a requirement to stay 3 years in college for football. It's different in different sports. I actually like the way college baseball has done it, where you can either go to the minor league system straight out of high school, but if you go to college, you have to stay 3 years. I've always loved that. What I was advocating for a couple years ago is for one of these other professional leagues, like when I wrote this when The Rock bought the XFL, but now there's USFL has come back. For one of these leagues, instead of trying to compete against the NFL, to actually be the minor league grooming system, where kids who don't want to go to college, they think like, I'm going to be a first-round pick. All I want to do is play football. I'm 18 years old. I need to go ahead and make $100,000 a year, very much like the G League in basketball right now. Should there be a G League type system for football where these kids who feel like colleges are exploiting them, they can go straight to playing professional in some capacity?
I think when you say should be and will be, those are obviously two different things. I don't know if you'd be able to really get enough prospects to make up a league full of those teams, or enough, even if it's 3 or 4 teams, to be able to, get enough people to show up in the crowd and stuff like that. And playing college football, a lot of times why you see guys, that have made the decision to not go straight from high school to the NBA or whatever, to go to college for a year, maybe 2 years, is that experience. The college football experience is unparalleled basically as a player, in my opinion, especially at the highest level. Because these kids that would go to that G League, it's not like they're signing with University of Phoenix or Purdue University online. Like you're talking about Alabama and Georgia and USC and Ohio State and places like that. So I think that's going to be a little bit more difficult. I don't think college football would allow that. I don't think the NFL and college would be able to come together on terms that allow that. I think it could get really, really murky because we already see the way recruiting is handled in college basketball when a kid's having to choose between the G League and Duke and Kentucky. You want to talk about getting nefarious. That introduces a whole new, I heard Bruce Pearl talk about it, and he's like, how am I supposed to recruit against a G League team like Jalen Green, for example? Came down to 3 schools. I think it was Auburn, somebody else in the G League. How am I supposed to compete with the G League when they're like, all right, here's $1 million?
Yeah, well, one of the points people have brought up when I said that is, well, the best players then wouldn't play college football. And I say, well, if they feel like they're being exploited, then let them go do something else. I mean, March Madness, we always talk about how
but
great
the players aren't now with these new rules. That's the thing. That's my thing that I'm saying against Dabo. The players don't feel exploited.
Okay.
Now you're starting to see it went, before this happened, from the players feeling exploited to now the coaches are feeling exploited. But Dabo, how can you sit here? Well, you're sitting here saying, all right, well, it's causing manipulation and I've got to do this and I'm going to have to do all these horrible things and now I'm going to have to tell kids you're not coming here to get an education or whatever. What amazes me, the coincidence that's hard to square for me is I don't hear a lot of other coaches saying this. You kind of heard Nick Saban mention it a little bit before it all came out. Then all of a sudden, he's out there hyping up Bryce Young's going to be $1 million quarterback. Right? But Lane now is talking about the NIL, and he's face first into it.
Yeah.
He's diving face first into it. My thing is, how is it so coincidental that the one guy that is at the most high-profile place that's screaming the loudest about this just happens to also be the guy that was really anti-transfer portal and didn't really sign JUCO guys? What are the odds of that? To me, you were making burgers, or you were running a burger restaurant, you were buying your meat from a certain place, beef you always used, it was going great. Now they start selling organic, plant-based beef. You got to switch your whole flow up to try and stay at the top. I think that's why Dabo's mad.
First of all, I'm not going to say anything good about plant-based beef. You already know that.
I'm not a huge fan either.
That's the food my food eats. But second of all, I'm not going to pretend like Dabo Swinney's first priority is not winning football.
Let's be realistic.
We know it is.
You got family,
He does seem like one of those coaches who genuinely wants to recruit good kids, wants to mentor young men, and wants to see them graduate and get an education regardless of what they do at the professional level. You would agree with that at least, right?
No, I think Dabo is a really good guy. I think the way he conducts himself is perfectly fine. But I also know what he does for a living. I also know how much money he makes, And I also know that Clemson has been the highest they have ever been from a success standpoint, and they were doing it a certain way.
Yeah.
Now the market changed. When the market changes, you have to change. And I don't think he's in love with that. And I feel like he's going to try and grind this point all the way down. But watch, all of a sudden, Clemson will have somebody that comes out of the transfer portal and balls or is in the Heisman race, and you'll never hear another word about it. You'll never hear another word about it. Blaine, what's the
It's funny how you complain about it until it starts working.
That's exactly right.
I mean,
you're like, man, this new air conditioner sucks. And then an hour later, you're like,
this. Well, here's this quarterback from here, and he breaks records.
Here's Hercules.
You know what? I'm kind of a huge fan of this.
You know, another thing I have to say is when his worst season, when you're like bad season at Clemson is 10 wins.
Yeah.
He's doing something right.
And one of your losses is to the national champion.
For sure. In a game that was back and forth because neither team could score.
The only touchdown that gave up was from your quarterback.
Yeah, true.
That's actually true.
Brian Walsh says there's no way in hell that the NFL is going to have sponsored a minor league team.
I agree.
They don't need to. That's what I'm saying. Like,
but they would
USFL,
have to be involved, though.
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's, and I shouldn't have said minor league in that. I mean, Major League Baseball owns the minor leagues too. I get that.
Yep.
I don't. What I'm saying is, for a business model for XFL or for USFL to go get some of these kids that, just like the G League did, the NBA does. What is the? I don't know how much the NBA sponsors the G League. Do
it's
they own
a lot.
The G League? Do they own them? Or?
It's basically like the way the G League works in the NBA is. They're like affiliates. Mm-hmm. We know they're like affiliates, but it is an NBA organization, basically. Mm-hmm. It's a feeder to the NBA. Like you're not... What worries me is I don't think the NFL would ever sign off on that.
But I don't need to. That's what I'm saying.
But what I'm saying is you almost have to because, look, let's be realistic. The NFL's a monopoly. They are a monopoly. No other league has worked. And I'm not talking about in another country. I'm talking about the United States. No other league has worked. Why? The NFL is so big, they're so vast, they're so dominant, they have their hands in everything. If the NFL wants the USFL not to work, the USFL will not work. Okay. If they don't want the XFL to work, I don't think the XFL will work, but I think the XFL has a better chance because it's different. My biggest thing is if you started to have players that were legitimately going to go to the NFL, go to this G League and then go to the USFL or something, the NFL would pull the rug out from them
and if they did that, then yes, they could squash it just like that. It's still a free market. The rule is you have to be 3 years removed from high school. It doesn't say you have to go to college for 3 years.
If
somebody comes in, look, we're going to pay you $250,000 to come be the starting quarterback at the Generals for the USFL straight out of high school. You do that for 3 years and then go play for the Seahawks. The NFL would have to make a decision. Do you really want a couple of the best players?
And it takes a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of push to be able to get it even off the ground enough to where that starts becoming a conversation because you got a higher mountain to climb than Leonidas when he had to climb up to consult the Oracle about going to war during the Carnea.
And it's a lot different being 18 years old and going to play against grown men in basketball and being
that's true.
That's what I've always said. That's what I've always said. That's what I've always said. And I don't. Hey, I want the collegiate football experience to be the best that it possibly can be. I mean, that's my favorite sport. I just, I think that there's some things we can do to make it better, or at least to preserve some purity in it.
For sure. Well, we're going to get back to the Booster Club here in a minute. Want to bring on former Heisman winner, national champion at Georgia before they won the Natty this year. And obviously he's running as a candidate in the Senate for Georgia, Herschel Walker. It's a fantastic interview. And I want to say this. We're all ball, no politics. So when we interview somebody that's a former Heisman Trophy winner, that was an Olympian, that is considered one of the greatest athletes of all time ever in any sport, don't get it twisted. We're talking ball, college football playoff, a ton of stuff. This is a hell of an interview. Check it out now. All right, everybody, as promised, very excited. We've done a lot of interviews, whether it was at the old show, back to the new one, but couldn't be happier to bring in a guy that's a legend on the field, off the field, former Olympian, Heisman Trophy winner, national championship winner for the Georgia Bulldogs, and now Georgia's senatorial candidate, Mr. Herschel Walker. Herschel, what's up, man?
Hello there. How are you guys doing?
Man, I'm doing great. Appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy man. I got to start off. I'm from the South. I'm from the state of Alabama. I know how important SEC football is. What was it like for you being on the last team that won a national championship at Georgia when you were a freshman? You guys beat Notre Dame. Watching the Bulldogs and Kirby Smart finally get back to the top of the mountain.
Well, I was excited because it's been a long time coming. I think over the past couple of years, they've gotten so close. They've gotten so close, and Coach Smart has done one excellent job in recruiting and And then that's what it takes. You got to be able to recruit and to see them win a national championship and be resilient, because, you know, Alabama is a tough team. And after the SEC loss, they came right back and played an incredible game in the national championship. So I was happy to see that.
Yeah, and again, they telling stories about you guys winning it and doing what y'all did, and now this team with a guy like Stetson Bennett. I'm not going to take Blaine's thunder on that. He's got a question about Stetson for you. But Herschel, you know, you've been a part of winning teams. You understand what the team values are and how it has to happen. For Kirby Smart to take this Georgia team that we know is very talented, going up against Nick Saban, who's done something I don't think we're ever going to see again in college football, what do you think is the main ingredient for a championship team today in college football?
Oh, you got to be able to recruit.
Yeah.
Right now, you got to be able to recruit right now. And I think right now since you can pay athletes, it's going to be difficult. I tell you what, it's going to get so competitive right now. So I think whoever can come up with a better widget, I think that's the key. You got to come up with a better widget today. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard, I think.
Yeah, and I do got to ask you, Herschel, a lot of talk about college football playoff, expanding it. It's a lot different than the old days. What is your opinion on expanding the playoff to maybe 8? 12's the top number for me, because anything past that, you start messing with the regular season. What does Herschel Walker think about expanding the playoff?
Well, I do think they need to expand the playoff. I think they need to expand to at least 8 teams, And the reason I say that is, you know, you have some of the smaller schools that make it in. And I think they should have the chance to at least play. You know, some of those smaller teams may go undefeated, and I think it's not right to mark them down. You don't know the player's heart. You know, and I think that's one thing people got to realize. You don't know what's in their heart, and they step out there on the field, they may show you something you don't know, because it's easier to mark stuff down on paper, but you still got to get out and play the game. And I think just because you're from a small school don't mean that you shouldn't have an opportunity to play. So I think expanding the playoff to 8 teams, and they saying it'll take too much time, and I know they can do it through the bowls. Right now you got every bowl in the world, so you can expand the playoff through the bowls, and I think they'll make more money. But and you know, with the SEC now growing, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue to my companion, David Conover here. He was against expanding the playoff until I just juiced him with information and really made it to where he can understand why it was a good idea. And see, Herschel Walker agrees with me, Cone.
I changed my mind because
there's
of
the
Herschel.
L, my friend.
That's the only reason. That's Herschel.
I say it's 8 teams, but I don't know whether I want to go 12 teams. That may be too many, but I do think 8 teams. Try it. I think at least they got to do it. Try it.
I agree.
Be fair.
Well, yeah, for sure. Herschel, thanks so much for joining us. As someone from Statesboro, Georgia, it goes without saying that I've been a lifelong fan, okay? I want to start with Dabo Swinney's comments on the state of college football this weekend. He was critical of the transfer portal and NIL. What are your thoughts on the current state of college football, and where do you see the future of this sport going?
Well, I think the transfer portal is going to hurt college football. I think paying athletes is going to hurt college football. You know, I think that was one of the worst mistakes they made. And, you know, I think in today's world, everybody want to be politically correct, but they don't want to be just. Have they thought about these athletes now having to get accountants? You know, right now, they got to get accountants. They got to be able to pay taxes. They got to be able to do a lot of things. And when you give them a lot of money, we've seen a lot of professional athletes that get money. They go out and buy all these cars and all that. And next thing you know, they got problems with the IRS. Well, is that what we're going to have now in college football? And then when you're talking about the transfer portal, when a player feels that he can't play, he can leave. I think that's a sign to show players that they can quit. Well, in today's world, everyone don't get a trophy. We need to realize everyone don't get a trophy. You got to work. You got to get in there. You got to work. You got to make the position. So I think what they're doing right now, I think is going to hurt this game, because if you look back over history, what hurt the historical black colleges is when they start taking some of the black athletes out, sending them to these bigger schools. All of a sudden, they didn't get the athletes anymore. So it started hurting the historical black colleges. Well, right now, you're going to start paying the athletes. So some of the smaller schools not going to get the athletes. It's going to hurt them. So I think to try a test, which is right now, I don't know if this is a test or not, but I do think this is going to hurt college sports.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it seems like there could be a solution between not exploiting kids based off their name, image, and likeness, and also preventing the complete professionalization of college football. Let's see if we get there.
Well, one of the things I had suggested, but then it seemed like they don't want to listen to Herschel Walker. But
I do.
Said, yeah, now college should be about education.
Thank you.
And I said, you can pay the athletes, but why don't we do it this way? Why don't we take that money and put it in an endowment account? And it stays in that endowment account, and it draws interest and all things like that. And you can take some of the interest and help underprivileged people to get a chance to go to college. And when that athlete shows back up with a degree, from any college, it doesn't have to be that college, he can receive every cent he earned for during that time. I think that would be something I think would be great. Then you're going to put it back on education, because I think we do have to educate kids, and I think that's a big part.
Well, that's a very rational solution, which means I don't think that we will see that implemented, unfortunately.
Yeah.
My second question for you is, you set the pinnacle high, okay, during your college career. I want to know what college running backs, since you've played, have caught your eye the most. Who are your favorites to watch since you played?
Since I played football, a guy that there's no doubt Bo Jackson comes to mind, Barry Sanders comes to mind. And if you throw it to guys that playing today, Georgia is a university of running backs right now. They got every running back in the book. I think of somebody like Nick Chubbs, and I'm not just picking him out, but the reason I picked Nick Chubbs out, because this guy had an injury, an injury that most people couldn't come back and play. And he worked his tail off to get back on that field and play. That just shows the resilience that he has and stuff. And Sonny Michel, a guy that was so small, and I remember telling him, Sonny, you run like you're a big guy. Hey, these guys are big. You need don't try to run them over. But watching a guy like that. But then I think any running back that can catch the football, because I said, you go to the next level, you want to be able to catch, even though I think players could catch. But I said, I remember when I played, one of the best things that I think Coach Landry loved about me is I can catch a football. So that made me be able to stay in on third down. And if running backs today can catch the ball, what the coach is going to do then is say, hey, we're going to leave them in the game and put a linebacker on them. They're going to put a linebacker or a strong safety on them, which is going to be very difficult for a strong safety or a linebacker to cover a running back that can run routes and catch the ball. So I encourage all running backs, work on your pass catching, work on your route running, because you can become more dangerous against any opponent.
For sure.
Yeah, and you know what they say, if you can pass pro, you can catch the ball in the backfield, and you can run it, you're going to play for about as long as a running back can play in that league, which may not be a super long time, but it's just like anything in the world. The more things you can do, the better job, and the longer you can have that job.
And if you looked at that Georgia team one year, their three running backs that they had in the backfield were all NFL guys, and it was ridiculous to watch. But Herschel, I'm going to go, first of all, man, I appreciate you coming on, and congrats on the national championship for the Georgia Bulldogs. I loved watching that team. So I'm going to go back to the quarterback position a little bit for Georgia. Stetson Bennett got somewhat of a bad rap last year during the season. A lot of people said, I was a little bit in that boat, but I think he proved me a little bit wrong till the end. Yeah, a little wrong to the end, but a lot of people said the defense won it and Stetson just didn't lose it. Do you think Stetson Bennett has anything realistically left to prove for being the starting quarterback for Georgia?
Well, I think that's the wrong thing to say, whether he got anything to prove. I think whether he can step back out there and play and, maybe win another national championship, because Georgia do have a lot of talent right now. They're coming back with a lot of talent. Stetson Bennett was a big part of them winning the national championship, and I will agree with you on that. That defense played one heck of a football game. I think that defense played one heck of a football game to keep Alabama out of the end zone. The many times that they did is absolutely incredible. But you got to give Stetson Bennett a little bit of credit, because his resiliency, because when you look back, that ball he threw, I thought, was not a fumble that they call a fumble. In the very beginning of the game, the Alabama quarterback, that was a fumble. But yet they said it was incomplete. But his resiliency, his coming right back, showed a lot of guts, showed a lot of character when he has gone through so much adversity. And that's what I keep telling kids today. I said, guys, I'm going to tell you something you may not like. You're going to get knocked down. You are going to fail at something, but you got to learn how to get up. You got to keep getting up, and you're going to have more failures than you're going to have successes. But the man that continued to get up will always be okay.
Yep.
Where you watch what Stetson Bennett went through when he first came to Georgia and left Georgia, came back. They were going to let him start. They were not going to let him start and all that. But he kept his head together, and he went out, and he brought Georgia to a championship. And normally the quarterback is the leader.
Yeah.
But, you can't take credit for that Georgia defense, that defense play. But we got to give Alabama a little credit, too, in the sense that, Alabama's been there for years. And, they end up having two receivers, not just one. Mm-hmm. Two main receivers are injured. And, that is very tough to take two big leaders from your team. But you always got to have guys get out and play. But I think this was Georgia's year.
Yeah.
I think this was Georgia's year. This was Coach Smart's year, and they proved it. And we hoping right now the jinx is broken. Right now, Alabama and Georgia now going to be who will win that game, because it's not going to be Alabama being the dominant one right now.
It reminds me, Blaine's got one more question, but I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Water Boy, Herschel. You may or may not have. The part when they finally, the Mud Dogs win the first game and the coach is hanging out at that after party. He's like, now that you won one, you can relax and put a couple more together, whatever. Just always reminds me of the coach from The Water Boy.
Yeah, and that Georgia defense is going to be everywhere.
Kobe Dean was probably my favorite player in college football.
Him, Jordan Davis. So one more question. So we don't talk politics on this show, but sometimes politics can have an effect on sports. Without getting in the weeds too much, is there anything that you would do that maybe affects sports that you would want to change if elected?
Well, there's two things I want to do. First of all, take men out of women's sports. I would like to shock that they'll put a man, a man in women's sports. That's one of the things I changed right off the bat. And the next thing I would change is just to take politics out of sports. When all this stuff happened, I just think that it separates players. My biggest thing was when everything was coming down, and I hate to go back to the BLM, that one coach or one management or one person decided that we all going to think like this. Well, that's not right, because this is a team. They should have went in, and I suggested this, but as I said, they don't like to listen to Herschel Walker. I said, guys, when you start talking about whether this team is going to support this, why don't you bring everybody into a meeting, everyone in, and you have a vote as a team? Because some people may disagree with it. But if you vote as a team, give everyone a chance to decide, because in this country here, we do have that right to decide what you want to happen. And then once you agree on it as a team, then you go out as a unit and say, I depend on this. Because let's be honest here. There's some of the things that they were saying, and I know there are some players that couldn't agree with it. And I know for a fact they didn't agree with it, but they had to go along with it, or you're going to get canceled out. And that's what is so terrible about today's world, is people are getting canceled out because of what they feel.
Yeah. And we always talk about, I always say on this show, I think I said it off the top of the show the other day, sports is something that should unite us. In a world where everything is ripping us apart on the outside, sports is one of the few things that a bunch of people like that will bring us together. I always talk about when you're in the stadium or you're at the arena and you're sitting with a group of fans that cheer for the same team you are, and your team scores or makes a big play and you're high-fiving the people you don't know around you, you don't care who they voted for. You don't care what their stance is on certain things. Sports is something that should unite us, not divide us. And I know you share that same sentiment as well. And last question, Herschel, and we'll let you run the ball out of here and go for about 60 and a score. What have you taken from your time in sports? Because sports, in my opinion, especially the game of football, is one of the best teachers of life there is. You talk about adversity and stuff like that. What have you taken when you were running the ball to now running for the Senate? Well, you tend to do a lot of running's your thing, man, but what did you take from there that you're using now in your later life and you're trying to get other people to understand about you?
One of the things I've taken that I think that were very important was something that I think that Coach Dooley said when I first got to practice. He said, guys, if we stick together as one unit, we believe in each other, we're going to win a championship. Well, as I'm running right now, I said, guys, I represent everyone. It doesn't matter about any party, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. I represent everyone, and everyone has a voice, and I want to listen to everyone. That's the reason I started going around the state, listening to everyone. I'm not just going to certain groups because I'm thinking I'm going to get that vote. I'm talking to everyone, because if you're an American and if you're a Georgian, you're my family. And I'm going to get behind you. I'm going to support you. So I think that's what I've learned in sports, that we're one team together. And what's so important, and I remember Coach Russell made this up, and everyone, I think a lot of colleges used it, is that big team and little me. I think that's what it's about. It's about big Georgia and little me, big United States and little me. Because it's not about me. It's about the country. It's about the state.
Definitely. Well, Herschel, man, it's been an honor to have you on. We'd love to do this again, getting closer to football season. I know you're going to be keeping your eye on that while you're running your own race, but we could not be happier with you showing up, and best of luck to you, my friend.
Hey, thank you. And I was looking in the bike, and I see the Auburn, and I see the Alabama. I didn't see the Georgia.
We listen.
Send
Herschel,
us something.
We would love a Herschel Walker memorabilia, something to put in here. We'll put it right back in the studio.
Hang it in the rafters.
We used to do our show outside of the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. We had a Georgia helmet too. We may need to bring that thing back.
Yeah, that's what we got to do. We got to get some Herschel and some Georgia stuff there.
Yes.
And stuff. It'll brighten the room up.
Yes, for sure.
Yes, sir.
Well, anything that takes the emphasis off all three of our faces will probably be good for the show.
That's a win.
Any of that stuff. But Herschel, I appreciate it, man, and good luck.
Hey, thank you. Now, God bless you guys.
You too.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Herschel was great. Great. And it's so funny, you know, we always talk about all ball, no politics, and you announce like Herschel Walker's coming on the show, and everybody's like, oh, I guess it's like what, talking about the college football playoff expansion or how to keep politics out of sports?
Maybe the greatest running back in college football.
Maybe one of the greatest ever.
Just look at him, man. He could still do it.
He could tote it.
He could tote it in the league.
How many is he going for right now? How many?
I bet he could get a 3rd and 2.
Garrett.
I bet he'd get a 3rd and 2.
He could be a 2-down back in the league.
Man, that's
He's
a lot to
85
ask
for
right
sure.
now.
He could do it.
Maybe 10 years ago.
85 for
look
sure.
at him.
But like, how many games though? We talking about like one game? Like we're gonna bring Herschel back for
6.
one game?
Just don't put too much on this.
Yeah,
6
that's. I
games.
mean, we gotta.
Minimum.
That's asking a lot, but shoot, man, if, there's no way I'm looking.
That was incredible, though. Seriously.
Definitely.
That was incredible.
But if you guys want to watch or listen to the rest of this show, head over to the Daily Wire and become a member. Join the club, or listen on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe, leave a 5-star review. It's the right thing to do, and I know you love it. And share it with your friends and also your enemies. We'll be right back with some more great stuff.